You're listening to Sensitive Changemakers. This podcast is created for highly sensitive leaders and is designed to support you to embrace your strengths and gifts so you can feel more confident in your own mind and body and live a life with intention, purpose, and more importantly, joy. I'm your host, Kate Carter, a fellow HSP who has a BA Honours degree in education, is a fully trained and qualified professional coach and NLP practitioner, and has over 17 years of teaching and over 3 years of coaching experience supporting highly sensitive people. I believe that you can do anything you want to in this life, but that sometimes the path forward becomes muddy with self-doubt and fear of failure. It's my mission to help sensitive thought leaders peel away the self-doubt and stories holding them back, for them to see their own beauty and strength so they can increase self-confidence and self-trust through thought and embodiment work, and see their path clearly and move forward confidently, living their life with intention and purpose. I would love for you to come and join us. Hello and welcome back to Sensitive Changemakers. This is a solo episode, the first one that I've done of 2024. So even though it's February, so I hope you're having a wonderful start to the week, or just a wonderful week if you're listening to this later in. It has been a long time since I have done one of these, and it has been quite the journey. Personal update, I am really enjoying my in-person events. So if you're in the Ibstock area in Leicestershire in England, then you can book in an actual in-person session with me. I have such a wonderful, calming room, thanks to Maria, who is owner of Mia's of Ibstock, and she's been absolutely awesome. She has painted the room in a lovely light blue. She's kitted it out. She goes up there every so often and goes, "What else do you need?" She's just amazing, and it's such a wonderful, wonderful, calming room. It's got the windows that look out onto the fields at the back. It's just a lovely place to sit and be. So I am absolutely loving that. I'm loving my online sessions as well, because that is where my kind of comfort zone is, I'd say. My comfort zone is definitely on the online, because that's how I started. That's how, I get to be in my space. I get to be in my study and where I'm recording right now. So the in-person has been a real kind of shift and change to that. And it's been really interesting to navigate through the differences between the two. So loving both of those. And I wanted to come on today because obviously, as you're aware, I kind of shifted back to what I originally started doing 5 years ago, when I was kind of investigating starting a business and what would I do. And I started with what I trained in, which was my NLP qualification, which is Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And I did this for my own reasons, just a very shortened version now. So those of you who have listened to this a lot know that I had my own journey with anxiety and panic attacks. I was looking for alternative therapy for that back in 2016, I think, because I was at a stage where I was absolutely fed up with having them. And I'd had the more traditional therapy for a long time up until that point. I decided to go with an NLP therapist/coach, and it was just a game changer for me. It was such a different way of looking at things, and it really helped me to connect my mind and body, which I think was what I really needed at the time. It's still something I wholly believe in. I think one of the missing pieces that a lot of people don't understand is that if you want to move on from anything like anxiety, depression, anything where it's really deeply embedded into your identity, you are going to have to look at how that plays out in the body as well as your thought processes. And I think both of those are really equally as important. The other part of this that I'm going to touch on slightly, but I think I could do a whole episode on this on its entirety, is, and I'm going to try and say this in the best way possible, and I hope it comes across as it's meant, which is with so much compassion and understanding, is when you have something like that, and I'll use my example of anxiety here. When you have severe anxiety like I did, there's so many things that are happening internally. But one of the things is that you've got this kind of clash. Because on a conscious level, you don't want the anxiety. You don't want to feel like that. You're fed up of worrying. You're fed up of it seemingly controlling your life, which is how it feels. It feels like it controls you and you have nothing, no control, no power. It feels very much like it's happening to you, like life is happening to you rather than for you. So you've got that on one hand. And then on the other hand, your subconscious doesn't want to let that part of you go because it's all it knows, or it's all it's known for quite a while, depending on how long you've had it. And if it lets go of that part of you, that identity, then who are you? And it's a really scary prospect. And as you delve deeper into the journey of, navigating through, again, I'm giving the example of anxiety, but you can pretty much insert whatever you're struggling with at the moment there. As you're kind of navigating through that, that becomes more and more apparent. And for a lot of people, the prospect of letting that part of them go is scarier than actually sticking with the anxiety in the first place. And again, it's not a conscious decision. It's not like you're saying, oh, I'm going to stick with the anxiety then. It's very much underneath the surface. And it is that kind of clash of two parts of you. And for me, NLP really supported me in both of those parts of me understanding, and what I like to call like the turning off and on tap, which is something that's been cemented since I've been doing my kind of trauma informed training as well, which is very much like it doesn't need to be all or nothing. It doesn't mean to be like that part of you die straight away or that part of you go straight away. It can be okay, we're just going to turn that down a little bit, or we're going to turn it up. So it's playing around with, and I say playing around there in inverted commas, not because it's um, something fun to do or it's something kind of not serious, because it is serious and it does need consideration and compassion as you're going through that. But that idea of testing, maybe testing is a better word than playing. So testing out what works well, what doesn't work well for you, how much can you turn that tap on, how much do you want to turn that tap down, etc. So anyway, that's a shortened version of where I'm coming from and why I love NLP so much. Now, I didn't know any better at that time. I was absolutely like, this is amazing. I'm so pleased I found this. And I started training in it as well with a lovely company called Simply Changing. And Louise, shout out to Louise, is amazing. We did like 2 hour sessions I think it was every week or every 2 weeks. I can't remember now. And then the odd Saturday morning one as well. You had to record yourself doing the actual tools and techniques and send those in for like evaluation. You had to do a reflective journal. There was quite a lot to the training itself, and I'm so proud of myself for completing it, and I'm so pleased that I did it. And I didn't think any more of it until I started seeing, it's a bit like when I did coaching as well. You start to see the people who don't necessarily understand it or like it, which is fine. Everybody's got their own opinion. And I started seeing it dissed everywhere on the internet, like this is a waste of time, this is rubbish. And it kind of made me feel like ashamed that I'd done that training. I was like, oh, I feel awful now. Like, what if I've wasted my time? And anyway, so all of those thoughts and feelings came up. And so I shied away from it. I kind of pulled away from it. And I was like, oh, I won't talk about it anymore. I won't share it anymore. And then I got talking to some BACP accredited counselors, and I was talking about the fact that I just done my NLP training. And they were like, that's great. We did quite a lot of NLP in our counseling course. It was a module in our kind of counseling, and we talked about it, and it's really good and it's very detailed. And I've had since then had similar conversations with coaching. So I didn't actually do NLP on my coaching training, but that may be because I've already done it. But I know a lot of coaching qualifications out there, they go over NLP as well. It's like, oh, okay, actually, maybe I shouldn't have pulled back. Maybe actually it's more important than I thought it was. So hence why I am now talking about it more, because I think if it was important enough for me to actually change who I was and how I moved forward, then if it changes or supports somebody else, then that is an amazing thing. So I'm going to go over what NLP is and how I trained in it and how I use it. And I'm going to sort of caveat this with saying that there are so many different NLP qualifications out there, and you do have to be really, I'm going to say careful, but just discerning in what you're consuming and listening to. Mine is accredited by the NCILP. And that was a really important decision for me to take when I did my NLP training. So just be aware. And I'm really against the people out there who use NLP as like, I can, cure you in 2 hours. And for me, that's not what NLP is about. So NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, was around in the 1970s, and it was created or founded by two people called John Grinder and Richard Bandler. I think there were some other people involved, but they were the two main ones. And what they did is they looked at successful people, therapists, counselors, people who had a lot of success in supporting others in their kind of professional career. And they looked at what made them successful. So what was it that supported them? And they looked at the strategies that were used. And it predominantly looked at the thoughts, the language, patterns of behaviors that supported specific outcomes. And they kind of used that to create some principles of NLP. And the one that I really loved when I first kind of started training in it was there is no failure, there's only feedback. And that's really kind of permission given, isn't it? To know that there is no failure, there is only feedback so that you can improve again. So that was one of the foundational pieces that I really liked. The other one is you're not broken, you don't need to be fixed, you're whole already as you are. And I loved that as well, because I think so many people go into kind of a therapy situation thinking that they are broken, thinking that they are somehow not fully whole, and that they need some fixing, they need some help. And while, yeah, the actual support is absolutely part of it, you are completely fine just as you are. And what we often find is that when we're doing, definitely when I'm doing these sessions, it's about rediscovering parts of you that were always there that have been kind of covered up for whatever reason, maybe through a bit of trauma, through serious trauma, through conditioning, through those developmental years. There's something normally that's kind of been covering that up. And so I just love the idea that you're not broken and you don't need to be fixed, because I think that's a really important part, especially if I'm on the receiving end of that, somebody who had really bad anxiety, who thought that was exactly the case for me every single day. Hearing somebody say that to me, like, just because you've got anxiety doesn't mean that you're broken or you need fixing, was just really nice to hear. And so it's something I live by now that I'm on the other side. So one of the other kind of fundamental parts of NLP is that everybody has their own internal map. And what this means is we all live in the world. We all live in a reality. But how we perceive that reality is very subjective and very individual to each person. And so one of the things as an NLP practitioner, an NLP therapist / coach, is understanding my client's map, understanding how they see the world, understanding the lens that they see through, so that we can understand what is going to support them in moving forward. So it's very kind of person-centered. And some of the things that I loved about NLP that was so different to what I experienced before was they brought in the body. And this was what I was meaning earlier when I was saying that reconnection between body and mind is sometimes a missing piece. So you bring in the senses in NLP. You bring in the idea that the body and the mind are connected and that they both influence each other. So the body influences the mind and the mind influences the body, and actually working with it as a whole rather than just the mind. And that was the game changer. So there are lots of different ways how people perceive their map. And when I first started teaching, and I'm going to have a bit of a crossover here, there's always these kind of like buzzwords in teaching every so often, and they come round. And if you're in teaching for long enough, they come back round. It's like a bit of big circle. One of the ones when I was started teaching back in 2006, 2007 was this VAC. It was visual, auditory, kinesthetic. And you were having to, as a teacher, making sure that you were creating lessons, creating activities that appealed to the different learners, whether they were visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. And the idea was that obviously visual learners learnt by looking and by seeing things around them, auditory learnt by listening more and taking things that way, and kinesthetic learnt by moving more and feeling and like touch and things like that. And this, I'm presuming, came from NLP. Now, it didn't necessarily work. I'm probably going to get slated for this. I obviously didn't work in teaching because the buzzwords, it kind of went and it didn't come back, hasn't come back. But the actual underlying principle of it is sound. Like we all learn by visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, but it's to the degree, again, like everything, it's not a have and not have, it's a scale. So we all learn on a varying scale in those different ways. So for example, I know that I'm quite a kinesthetic. Everything is about feeling for me. That might be because I'm highly sensitive, but everything is about emotions and feelings. And if I respond to things, it's the feelings of other people or myself or how that felt in the environment. That's very much the way that I work. And so when I'm working with a coach or a therapist, especially if somebody is NLP trained, they will use that to help to support me in moving to where I wanted to go by appealing to that side of me, because that is one of the ways that I work and I understand and etc. I've got a member of my family who I'm thinking right now who's very auditory, um, who really does listen and nods and takes it in that way and absorbs the information that way. And I've got another really close family member who is visual and picks up on the most minute detail when we're out. And you can tell. So as an NLP practitioner, when I'm talking to you, I will know by the language that you're using which one of these you like prefer, not in a conscious way. It's not like a conscious preference. It's something that's underneath the surface, as is with most things. And so if you're saying, I noticed this, I saw this, that's going to lead to very much, okay, so you're a visual kind of learner. You understand things in a very visual way. So that's probably a large part of how you navigate your internal reality, that internal world. If somebody is talking about, like I was saying earlier, about feelings and emotions and how you were feeling at that time, then that leads itself to being quite kinesthetic. You've obviously got the other senses as well. So somebody, more tasty, more smell, but those aren't quite, again, we all have them, but they're not quite as prominent as the other ones. So you've got these different ways that people actually experience their internal world and as a result, how they perceive their external world. We use these then to understand their thinking, their behavioral patterns, their emotional state, and their aspirations, so that we get an idea of where they want to move to and where they currently are. And what I love, I know I keep saying that, but what I do love is we look back at experiences that you've had, um, and we look at what lessons, what strengths can be taken out of those and brought to the present moment. So even though I'm trauma informed and even though we do spend time feeling the emotion, we generally, and what the way that I'm trained, and I do stick with how I'm trained, we think about how we're feeling now. So those senses now, that kind of, that kind of sense of seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, all of that, how that affects us now and how that's impacting on our behavior, emotions, and actions. And we may go back in the past to situations that, made us feel incredibly confident, or that where we saw something that we thought, oh, that was really good. And I felt really good when I saw that or heard that or whatever. And we bring those into the present moment. So we do go back, but we don't necessarily stay there, as with more traditional therapies that do look back in history and spend some time healing the trauma that came up. So that's kind of the big difference between traditional therapy, if you like, and more of the work that I do. So we do go back into their past, but it's always with the idea of bringing it back to the present so it informs the future rather than sticking in the past. So that's one of the big differences. Hope that makes sense. And let me know if it doesn't. The other thing that I think is really important is bringing an awareness to the subconscious. So, I always think about it as three levels. You've got the conscious brain or the conscious part of us, which is the thinking brain, it's the problem-solving brain, it's the one that we're aware, if that makes sense. We're aware that we're talking, we're aware that we're alive, we're aware that we're here. Then you've got the subconscious. So the subconscious, in my way of understanding, is that kind of subconscious thought patterns that are based on conditioning of those, again, most of us, those developmental years of 0 to 7, the things that we learned that we weren't able to question, we just kind of downloaded as a truth. Those thoughts, those feelings, those emotions, those values, all of those things that we learned in those years are still impacting the action that we're taking now, but we're just not aware of it. It's very subconscious, it's underneath the surface, if you like. And Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. So part of what we do is actually looking at some of those more subconscious thought patterns and bringing them to the surface and creating an awareness around it, because you can't change what you don't know. So that is one of the things that I really love working on. I think it's a huge part of NLP. And then underneath that, even further, if you go down, you've got the deep unconscious part of us that we will never really have any control over. And those are things like our heartbeat, the way that our lungs work, the way that our internal organs all work in such a beautiful way to actually keep us alive. Yes, there are people I've heard of that can slow their heart rate down and things like that. But for the average Joe, for the average person, most of us will not have any kind of conscious control over that. And that's okay, because our body can do a better job than we can in those situations. So those are the kind of three levels. And NLP really works on those top two layers. So the conscious level, the things that we're aware of, and the subconscious levels, the subconscious thought patterns that normally have been created through habit. And this brings me to the last point I want to make, because you will hear a lot of people out there saying that NLP can fix you, in inverted commas, I don't like that anyway, but fix you in 2 hours or whatever the case is. And yes, obviously, number one, I don't like the word fix for obvious reasons that we've stated before. But yes, of course, things can happen really quickly. As in with most cases, everybody's different. So there are going to be people who respond to this very quickly, and there's going to be other people that don't. For me and my experience with myself and with clients, it's generally a longer journey. It's not years, but it's a longer journey, because for most people, if you think about, and again, I'll take myself here as an example, if you think about the anxiety that I had that from, my first panic attack was from the age of about 9, 10 until I was 35. That's a long time of my body responding in the same way. So our whole system is amazing in so many different ways, and it does shortcuts just like a computer does to support us in running more effectively, in conserving energy. And that's a huge part of being human, is conserving energy and looking for the easy option. That's what we like doing as human beings, because we want to conserve that energy. And so one of the ways it does that is by creating shortcuts or automations. And it does that through repetition. So you've got so many millions of bits of data coming in from the external world every second. And your brain is there working out whether, first of all, whether it's important enough to keep. Is this bit of information I'm taking in from the external world, is it important for Kate to know this bit of information? If yes, it kind of gets stored, and it can get generalized, distorted, or just stored. And if you want more information about what that means, let me know. But generally, generalization is that all or nothing. Distortion is obviously what it says. So you distort the information that's coming in to make it fit in with what your internal world is saying. And storing is just storing as is. Or you delete it and it doesn't even get stored at all. It just comes in and then gets deleted. And then what happens is, the more and more you have the external stimulus coming in, and the more your brain reacts in the same way, the more that becomes a habit, and it creates that shortcut. So it goes, oh, this bit of information is coming in. When this something like this happens, Kate reacts like this. Let's make that a shortcut so she doesn't have to think about it anymore. It becomes an automation, just like driving a car. You do it for so long, you get in a car and you drive without even realizing. It's the same idea. So this bit of information is coming in. I don't know, say for example, it's big crowds. It was never an issue for me, but just say for example, it was. Big crowds, when big crowds happen or when Kate's in a big crowd, she always reacts by having a panic attack. So let's shortcut that so she doesn't even have to think about it anymore. So that means that every time I'm in a big crowd, I automatically have a panic attack because that's my body's trying to help me out by conserving energy. It doesn't realize that actually it's making my life really difficult. And so with NLP or with any kind of therapy, what you're actually doing is you're trying to rewire that habit. And it takes time for the majority of people because, I mean, how long did I just say that I'd had anxiety for? We're talking, decades. And so I'm trying to incorporate a new habit to replace the old one. And that takes time because it's got to be repeated so many times until your subconscious goes, this is important for Kate. So when this happens, this is what she does now. Let's make that a shortcut so she doesn't have to think about it anymore. So, for example, if we use me rewiring my brain about being in a crowded room, when she's in a crowded room now, she takes a deep breath and she has, I don't know, say for example, she has a deep breath, um, and she feels calm and she feels relaxed. That's what happens now. She's been doing that enough times that we're going to store it in our subconscious and it's going to become automated. So she doesn't have to think about that anymore. And that is literally how personally I have resolved my anxiety. It has been slow and over time, so that when the old, and I'm going to say triggers because I think most people know what I mean there, when old triggers now come in, I don't respond the same way that I used to. So it doesn't immediately go to a panic attack like it used to. It comes in and I react in a different way. To start off with, what it meant was there was a delay between me experiencing the trigger and me having a panic attack. Then that delay got longer and it was long enough for me to then insert a new habit in there. So the trigger would come in, I'd be able to take a breather and then insert a new habit there. For me, that was a mixture of body and mind work. Now everybody's different, but that was just how it supported me and how I got around it. Um, but I'm hoping that kind of makes sense. So NLP is very much body, mind together, creating that awareness of the subconscious and bringing it to the surface so that you can actually look at it and go, oh, I didn't even know I did that. Yeah, we need to change that. Or I would like to look at that in more detail. And it's always, always got the roots that you have everything you need inside you. You are not broken. You don't need something external. You have everything within you. And I'm getting quite passionate because that is such a big thing for me. And it's a foundational part of everything I do. You have everything you need inside you. You do not need anything external to come in and change you. It is just about finding the right tools and strengths and skills within you and bringing them to the surface because I promise you, you've got them in there. So I'm hoping that helps. And the things that what I do, so NLP and coaching, I think goes beautifully together because coaching is all about creating goals and moving you forward and looking at what's in the way and what you need in order to kind of navigate through any problems that are popping up and how to actually make it work for you. And I love combining that with NLP. So I work, and so far, just to give you an idea, I've worked with anxiety, OCD, communication, so improving how you actually communicate with different people. So that might be, it's generally in a work environment, but it might be in a personal one. ADHD is another one. General stress and overwhelm. Those are the ones that I've been working with so far. And I just find it amazing that everybody's different. Everybody has a different process that they need. And that's been a big thing for me to kind of work on as myself, as a kind of coach and a practitioner, is actually understanding that that's okay, that what worked for one person isn't going to work for another. And so I always come back to that foundational point that I made right at the start, which is everybody has their own internal map. And as long as I remember that, I almost kind of chant it to myself before every session. It enables me to then get a really good session in with a client, because I'm allowing them to guide. I'm allowing them to kind of guide us through the session, and me, then all I have to do, and I say all I have to do, but my main role then is to listen and actively listen to the way that they learn, to what their map is, to the way that they perceive both their internal and external world. So I can start seeing their strengths, and I can start seeing their skills, and I can start seeing how they learn. So we can actually build a picture together and bring together what is really going to support them and moving them forward. So I hope that has made sense, and I hope you found it useful in understanding more about what I do. And if you've been listening to this and you think, oh, I'd love to learn more, then sessions do start at £50 UK. And you can always reach me through Instagram, Facebook, or email. All of the links are in the show notes, and I look forward to hearing from you. I will be back next week with another guest episode, which I'm really looking forward to. And I will see all of you guys soon. Lots of love. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you have any takeaways or any questions, please do reach out to me either through Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook at Kate Carter Coaching, or you can email me at kate@katecarter.co.uk. I always love to hear your feedback and the things that you have taken from the podcast. If you know of any other highly sensitive people, then please do share this so that I can reach more and support more highly sensitive people to embrace their strengths and gifts. As a thank you, I will pick a winner every month for a free 50-minute coaching session with me. Thank you so much.